Okay, everyone. Tuesday's morning briefing from the Celtic Way, and we are still rejoicing after the weekend result, guys. We've entered the international break now. Technically, we're in it yesterday. Doesn't feel like we were in it yet. It certainly does today. After all the stuff that happened last week, a little bit quieter, but that's not a bad thing, guys. Maybe allows us to talk a little bit more about the weekend and also look ahead to what Celtic can achieve this season. Hello, Tony. How are you?
I'm very well. That's very much the calm after the storm, isn't it? With the transfer window shutting, Champions League draw, the first derby of the season. So it's now kind of we're all coming down from all of that, aren't we? And it's all a bit quiet, Ryan, isn't it?
It certainly is, but I'm not complaining because it was really, really busy for the past couple of weeks. You know, you had games, you had transfer stories, you had the Champions League draw too. I'm enjoying this bit of quiet, and it allows you time to go back and reflect on what has been a quite incredible start for Celtic in all competitions this season. Look forward, but also look back. I think there's plenty of excitement and enjoy at what's happening right now at Celtic, and I don't think anybody's complaining about what's happening.
I think what we know now, I mean, a week ago, we didn't know how the transfer window was going to end. We didn't know the squad would have. There was a lot of doubt over whether we'd get the quality in. I guess that still remains to be seen because we don't really know about a number of the players. But at least we know the squad that we have now. The Champions League stuff is obviously what everyone's kind of focused on. And we now know the fixtures and the draw for that. So we can... I think I said to you on Friday, was it? Friday's show, Tony. The season is mapped out now, and we kind of we know what's up for grabs. Yeah. I guess going forward over this next wee period.
Of course, it's just you just can look forward to it now, can't you? Even the Champions League draw. The minute that finished, you were just like, "Oh wow!" You're kind of thinking, you know, and you couch that with the fact that Celtic's European record over the last decade and beyond has been pretty deplorable, but there was just something in you after that draw that said, bring that on. You know, sometimes it's bravado when you draw against Real Madrid or somebody big and you say, bring it on, and you know deep down in your heart that you're going to get turned over. But I looked at that draw and I thought, I don't think any of those teams will turn Celtic over, even though Dortmund's there, Villa were there, you know, and Atalanta there, but you just felt a wee surge of confidence, you know, oozing through you after what happened in the transfer window. You know, time will tell if the draw's kind. Celtic now have to go out and win football matches at that elite level. But everything that happened in that week, we all predicted things that might happen, but it all came to fruition, didn't it? We got players in that the manager wanted. We got at this moment in time, it seems like a favourable draw. Time will tell, and we got a result, and a really good result in the first derby of the season, which put us in a great shape heading into the first international break. There's a real spring in the step of Celtic supporters, and I think there's a bit of a come down now, isn't there? Because they didn't want the international break because we're playing so well, want the next game to happen tomorrow. But hey, sometimes you've just got to sit back, as you say, reflect and breathe, and then go again.
It could be worse. Imagine how the other mob are feeling going into 2 weeks off the back of a 3-0 scudding in the biggest match of the season. I mean, I think today we can just have a general chat then about where Celtic are and looking forward. Morning, everyone. Lovely to have you all with us. Great numbers again today. And if you want to get involved in the chat, please do so. If you've got any points, questions, etc., just bash them away in your keyboard and I'll bring them up on screen. Just a few early ones on loads of different topics. Robert talking about the international breaks. Why is there so many? How many are there coming up? There's usually 3 at the start of the season, isn't there? There's usually one in September, October, November. Is that the case again?
I think so, yeah. I always think after major tournaments they should cut it down and really just allow the club football to go for a bit. You know, at least, I mean, they've kind of got a reason now with the Nations League, although I don't really like the Nations League.
They should have a month of international football where the teams play like 5, 6, 7 matches. They play all of their matches over the course of a month. Because that would be great. You'd actually look forward to it because you'd get all the matches. And fair enough, you'd miss the club stuff for a month, but then you wouldn't have all these breaks.
I would like any sort of reform regarding international football because it's just not the same as domestic football. I do not have the same passion or love for international football that I do for watching club football. It's just night and day, in my opinion. Yeah, I just want this international break over with. I'll enjoy it, but it's time to get back to the real stuff. It's 2 days in, and I'm wanting it to be back already. So I think that kind of shows you the mood music that's going about Celtic at the moment, that we're a bit impatient already with the international break, and it's only 2 days in. We want to see Celtic come up against Hearts. I'm sure Hearts would welcome that international break more than Celtic would because of the situation that they're in at the moment. But Celtic will be waiting for them. And I'll be on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to sampling that atmosphere too, which should be quite good.
Yeah, can't wait for it. Kevin has joined us. Well, hi, Kevin. How are you?
Hi, fine. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, maybe chat to you about the derby, get your thoughts. Just before that, a couple other comments what to get. Alexander, anyone had any issues with the new third kit falling to pieces? That's slightly concerning, guys. Kevin, you're usually a purchaser of, well, you're wearing Celtic gear at the moment. Have you been interested in the third kit, the camouflage type idea?
I think my time of buying replica kits passed some years ago. I think I've got a Lisbon Lions retro, like a 1960s retro hanging up somewhere, which I sometimes wear on some occasions. But,
fair enough.
Yeah, I'm kind of. I mean, even if it is falling apart, I'm not really in a mood to talk about our strips falling apart in a week like this.
Yeah. Just a couple other comments. Well, one more. Robert saying, good window. The only thing I would have liked to see was an experienced player like Moy to be signed. Other than that, good business in and out. Yeah, people are kind of coming around to the idea that it was a decent enough window. Right, what about Sunday then, Kevin? We've not heard from you since then, so let us know what you made of it.
Aye, great. Capped a great week. Capped probably one of the best and defining weeks in recent years. Real statement of intent off the park with those signings. I think they must have been listening to our podcasts over the last few weeks, because we've been urging them to fill exactly those positions with exactly those types of players. So well done belatedly to the Celtic board. And yeah, Sunday was great. Football and pace. We talked about this a few weeks ago, that even before the signings, you could tell that Brendan Rodgers had done a lot of work with the existing squad, because we're playing at a much more a faster pace. We're dwelling less on the ball. There's been a clear instruction, and been working on this to get the ball, to make forward passes. You don't see the kind of cagey, passes across the park, which happened probably necessarily in the first few months of Rodgers' second stint, as he was getting to know the players, they're getting to know him, and it all came to bear in spectacular fashion on Sunday, and Rangers couldn't live with us at all. I messaged a Rangers friend of mine and said, what was it about this particular 3-0 defeat that seems to have triggered Rangers fans so much, when there have been, even more convincing beatings over the last few years? And he said, it's just the realisation that we are at the bottom of the heap again. We're at the bottom of the hill. And it's yet another mountain to climb. And I think as well, it's just that a certain, kind of dawning realisation that they're years behind us. And also, Brendan Rodgers' post-match comment, this was quite chilling for everybody else, which this is just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the reaction's been so bad across the city, and obviously we don't particularly care too much about that, but I think it is a feeling that they're so far behind us, and there's no kind of signs of us relinquishing that kind of lead that we have over them, Tony. I mean, I guess the only thing that could stop us is complacency, and you don't sense that from this Celtic squad.
No. Listen, there was a point last season where Celtic were wobbling, potentially there for the taking, and the manager came into his own, didn't he? And guided this team over the line. But he also told you that Celtic would get better moving forward once everybody was on point, and he had these players in that he wanted. And I think it's like that, but in Star Wars, when you think you're going to catch up, and then the Millennium Falcon hits the button that goes into hyperdrive, and Celtic kind of did that on Sunday. There was a gulfing class between the two teams, and Rangers came to Celtic Park, maybe more in hope than expectation, and then watched the blip in the horizon, and then the dawning realisation that 21 million quid came off the bench for Celtic at 2-0 when the game was won. And the manager
I think that's part
also,
of it, isn't it?
Yeah, manager also making a wee kind of statement there as well, saying, here's another reason why there's a golfing class, right? We can bring on 21 million quid worth of players. They were on our bench, and there's a guy from Barcelona Academy on our bench, and there's a guy that was signed for 5 million quid, 6 million quid, also on our bench. So it was kind of subtle reminders to Rangers that, there is a golfing class here, there's a gulf between the two teams on and off the park, and it might take a while for you to catch up. And I think the penny dropped for a lot of them on Sunday, hence the, for want of a better word, meltdown. But the penny did drop on Sunday. Celtic have got the best elite level manager that they can get, and they can afford, and is around to boss this club at the minute. And he thinks like a supporter, but he also holds the extremely high office of the Celtic manager, which we think is the best managerial job in the world, which it's clearly not, but we think it is. And that's the way he treats that office as well. He said he wanted quality players, he got them in. He said this team would get better and they would improve. It's starting to happen. And I think over the other side of the city, it's very painful to take and it's hard to watch. But I keep going back to it. And only because you guys weren't around, this is a role reversal from the 90s. And if you live through the 90s, no Celtic fan will have any sympathy with what's going on over the other side of the city, because it was torture, utter torture, and you saw no end in sight. And even when Fergus McCann and company rolled in, it still took about 3 or 4 years for you to get on an even keel. Rangers did the 9. So even if somebody does come in to Rangers and something happens in that sense, they're still a good 2 or 3 years away from getting everything sorted the way they would want it. By that point, when what you're talking, maybe 6, 7 in a row, something like that, depending on who's at the helm. So it's all very positive and it's all very bright. And you got to enjoy these moments while you can. You live for the moment, don't you?
Yeah, it's interesting the point you're making, Tony, because you mentioned the 90s, and obviously a lot of Celtic fans older than me would look back at that, and we were talking about last night's Clyde Super Scoreboard before we came on, and Ryan will have heard this because he's listened to it, but there was a Rangers fan who phoned up and spoke about that, and people look back at the 90s, but the point he made was that he always felt during the 90s that Rangers were doing it because they were just buying the best players and they had all this money under David Murray, whereas Celtic are doing it now, I would argue, far more legitimately. We're doing it while we sell our best player every single summer, and we're still absolutely lording it over them. Ryan, I mean, they're glorious times, but it does feel like it's we're kind of, the thing about it is it doesn't feel like we're the end of the dominance. It feels like we're just continuing the dominance, and there's years of it still to come. You're muted, Ryan.
Sorry. I think the dominance is just starting, and we've only really seen the tip of what Celtic can be under Brendan Rodgers. That awkwardness of last season has went away completely. Everybody's quite happy with the fact that Brendan Rodgers is the manager. The manager seems pretty happy with the business that's been done in the transfer window. And yeah, everything's just ticking in the right direction, and everything's going swimmingly well this season so far. You know, they've managed to effectively replace Joe Hart, who was a leader. You've seen that even on Sunday with the way that he was reacting to his former players. They've arguably brought in a better goalkeeper in Kasper Schmeichel. They've improved in most positions. We'll await to see if Arne Engels is better than Matt O'Reilly, but he's a younger player. He can develop at his own pace. There's also Paulo Bernardo that was shadowing off of Matt O'Reilly last season. So I think Celtic are just building themselves up into a juggernaut, and I hope that juggernaut can then run in Europe as well as domestically. Rangers' big chance was last season, but those two games, specifically against Dundee and Ross County, will cost them in years to come. That was their big chance to really win the league. They had it in their hands. Yes, they had to beat Celtic in other games too, but you know, those games against Dundee and Ross County, that is going to cost them in years to come. I can only see Celtic dominance unless there's financial mismanagement at the top. I think they made those mistakes in the lead up to the 10-in-a-row season. I don't think that'll happen again. I don't think those mistakes will happen again. Celtic are just too tuned in at this point in time. They know what works. They know that what they're doing is a successful business model. They can replace their players. I just think it's a really, really positive time. I think it's special times at the moment to be a Celtic supporter or covering Celtic, because everything's just working just now, and I just want to see it happening on the European stage as well as domestically.
We got a comment in there from Liam just saying, for me, you give Brendan everything to keep him. He said he was here to make his dream. Well, decision makers at the club need to make him dream and keep him. Then we will dream. I mean, it's exciting to think that Brendan Rodgers is kind of just getting going. We had that last season, Kevin, where it was all a bit awkward and we struggled for a lot of it, but we managed to come good at the end. And now it's just a case of, I mean, in my mind, Brendan Rodgers is without doubt the best man we could have in charge of our club, realistically, that we could have in charge of us, managing us right now.
Yeah. When it was mooted that he was coming back for the second spell, there was obviously the debate amongst the fans about what sort of welcome we should have, if at all, because of the circumstances in which he left first time around. But I remember saying on here, and I think I tweeted this, that it's a no-brainer. You know, who cares about the circumstances in which he left? We were suddenly minus a manager after the fairly sudden departure of Ange Postecoglou, and it was at a crucial point in the year because, you know, we couldn't afford to spend too much time looking for a manager because suddenly the new season's on you, and suddenly we've got a genuine elite manager. And I know that word gets bandied about, and I know that some cynical people might say, you know, what makes him elite? You ask some Liverpool fans about the work that he did with Liverpool, which arguably was like the it was the preparatory work for Jurgen Klopp. You know, he's operated at the top level of the toughest league in Europe, in the world, probably. And suddenly he was available and he came to us. It was great. There were glimpses last season, you know, despite the wobbles, there was glimpses in the Champions League, more than glimpses, especially against Lazio and Atletico Madrid. We played for prolonged spells, high energy, high octane, very fluid football against some of the best teams in Europe. We finally got that, the win that I've been waiting for years, the 2-1 win against Feyenoord, which just helped slightly assuage the pain of the 1970 European Cup final against them. So there were signs there, even as even as Brendan Rodgers' team was taking shape, that, you know, he knows how to play in that environment, and the squad, I think, because it's now, you know, we're a few months, we're a year down the road, and it's been strengthened by the sorts of players who can play in that environment. And also, the draw that we've had some pretty tough draws in the Champions League. Okay, we haven't performed as well as we wanted to, but we've had we've been very unlucky with the draws. You can't say that, but this one, I think, we should be aiming to get out of that group. And I think that with this manager and that group of players, we can have serious, genuine aspirations to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, Pete's just asking us, Tony, what we think of the... Pete, I assume by the order of play, you mean the fixture, the order of the fixtures coming out. So we've got Slovan Bratislava at home, Dortmund away. I'm doing this off the top of my head, guys. This is very impressive. So Slovan at home, Dortmund away, Atalanta away, Leipzig at home, Club Brugge at home, Dinamo Zagreb away, Young Boys at home, and Aston Villa away. Tony, what do you think of that? Thank you.
First of all, that's very impressive for rhyming off those 8 fixtures. But yeah, listen, what I think is, I don't think any further forward in getting 3 points against Slovan Bratislava. That's the first one. It's the most important one. And if you can get your campaign off to a flyer, anything's possible, because the surge of adrenaline and confidence those guys will get from playing in front of that crowd at home, and that the whole ground will be rocking. That'll be a night for the ages, because I think people are getting a feeling about this Celtic team, and I just think they have to go about their business with a gusto the way they've been doing it so far this season, and concentrate. Because to have any kind of chance, we need to start winning our home games. Hate the word fortress and all that, cobblers. I just want Celtic Park to be rocking that night, and for Celtic to go out and perform to the standard, the high standard that we know they can, get their campaign off to a flyer and take that into Dortmund. That's first and foremost. We've just got to concentrate on a result against Bratislava, and we'll take the rest of them as they come. But it's kind, isn't it? The first tie's kind. You're not heading to Dortmund, you're not heading to Atlanta in the first one. Like last year we went to Feyenoord, actually played really well in Holland, but then get 2 players sent off, game's a bogey. Just you've got a home tie, follow that on from the last Feyenoord game and win it, and then we're going to be as competitive as anybody else in that group. Take it from there.
But see, even when you just mentioned that Feyenoord game, and I'm thinking back to it, it was Lager Bielka and home that were sent off, wasn't it? You even look at that this time around, there's not going to be that level of player with that inexperience at that level, is there? Like you look at the players who've signed this summer. First of all, I think the squad is stronger generally, Ryan, but you also look at the players we've signed, and you shouldn't have someone like Lager Bielka or Home who's really untested playing in those matches. I know, like, for example, Austin Trusty and Engels haven't necessarily played Champions League football, but they've got more experience than players like Home and Lager Bielka.
Listen, Home and Lager Bielka were playing in the Norwegian League and the Swedish League. These players have been playing in the Bundesliga and the Premier League. That's the difference. The squad has improved because the level that they've been operating at has been better for them. It's a better quality. They're both top 5 leagues. They can bring that experience in. Every second or third week, Engels would have been coming up against a Leipzig, a Dortmund, or a Bayern Munich, etc. Stuttgart as well. So they're used to playing against good teams. Austin Trusty, a bit of a learning experience in the Premier League, admittedly, with Sheffield United, but you're playing against Man City, Liverpool. There's got to be some positive experiences that will rub off on you and get you prepared for it. I was listening to Austin Trusty's interview on Friday after deadline day, and he seems absolutely delighted to be at the club. I think he'll go under the radar ever so slightly because Liam Scales was so good at the weekend, and Cameron Carter-Vickers looks back to his best. But Celtic do have another centre-back now, and a 26-year-old £6 million centre-back that will be expecting to play most games for his new club. So that competition really breeds well. Engels, we've only seen a wee bit of, but the early signs look promising, and he looks like he's got a good touch on the ball and a good drive. You just know within 2 or 3 minutes that a player has got quality by the way that he operates around the pitch and starts passing with the ball. His distribution just looked fast and like a European player would. I've seen so many players come up against Celtic and they're just comfortable immediately. That's what I got from him. So these players coming from a higher level should surely help Celtic when they play on that higher level in the Champions League. That Bratislava game, Celtic are going to be massive favourites for that.
Yeah.
I had a wee look at the weekend. Bratislava get beat 5-0 at home to is it Zilnius in the Slovakian
MSK Zelina.
In the Slovakian top flight. So that should be a game that Celtic should be earmarking as being a potential statement game. Go out, play your stuff, and put a good win on the board. Start as you mean to go on, because it's difficult fixtures from here on. I mean, it'll be a difficult game anyway, but on paper, big difficult, more difficult games are on the horizon.
Probably be tougher than Rangers. I mean, I'm not even joking when I say that. Like, Bratislava will probably put up more of a fight and make it much harder for us than Rangers in that opening game, but we will still be big favourites. I was trying to think when was the last time we'd have been such big favourites in a Champions League proper match, and Aalborg was the only one I could think of about 15 years ago, and we didn't win that. We drew 0-0 and lost away from home.
Actually, for some reason I ended up going to Aalborg, which is in the edge of the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
And we went into a 1-0 lead, actually, and they beat us 2-1. So just one a wee kind of historical Celtic fact about the Slovan Bratislava game, which you guys would probably call, Hamish and Ryan, you would probably call wicked. So we played them in 63-64. We got the semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup, and we beat them home and away. 1-0 at home, 1-0 away in the quarter-final. And I think it was a few days later we were playing Rangers in the Scottish Cup. And I think it was the last time that either, Rangers clapped us onto the park or we clapped them onto the park. But because in tribute to us getting to the semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup and overcoming a then very powerful European club home and away, Rangers actually applauded us onto the park. And then we went out in the next round against MTK Budapest, despite going to Budapest with a 3-0 win. I mean, we were like odds-on favourites in our second ever season in Europe to get the European Cup Winners' Cup final, and somehow contrived to lose 4-0 in the away leg. Anyway, sorry, there you go. Celtic fact over.
Very good.
I wasn't around, Kevin, in 64, and that result still annoys me. I mean, I don't know why. It's one of those ones when I look back in Celtic's history, see that 3-0 win in the first leg in the semi, losing 4-0, it really irks me. I get annoyed, and when people bring it up, I kind of, and then I just think, right, forget it. You want it about, but just that's what those daft facts do for you.
We were favourites to beat Aalborg, but then I think we were also favourites to beat the likes of Sion 2 years later, Switzerland, and they actually scalped us over 2 legs, and we only get through because they get thrown out.
A comfortable 3-0 win against Sion.
and
that's what the database will say. Yeah, absolutely.
Samara's hat-trick, wasn't it?
And again, against more recent years against Cluj, after getting a 1-1 draw in Romania, we then contrived to lose 4-3 at home, and that was for the Champions League.
Maribor was the one that I.
Oh God, really, Maribor! We drew 1-1 from Maribor away from home.
Yeah.
Guys, do we need to do this? Come on. I'm in a good mood. Do we need to list Maribor and Cluj and Ferencváros and all of this?
All I'm saying is
Malmo.
Those Slovan Bratislava get beat 5-0 at home, and that's a ridiculous result for them. And apparently, the club apologised to their fans. Slovan Bratislava have got a good European pedigree. Whether their manager survives or not, I don't know. But their fans demand a lot from them, and they will be in a better position when they come to meet us one way or another, then we can't read too much into them getting beat 5-0 at home. They're a proud European club whose fans are as passionate about their club as ours is, with the same expectations. And although we might consider ourselves favourites, we've got no right to assume anything because of our recent record. But that all said, I feel better about getting into this group of games than I would have been at any other time in the last 5 or 6 years.
It's up to the team, isn't it, to show us? You go, right.
Yeah, I just had a quick look at Slovan Bratislava. A couple of familiar names in there. Stoke City, former Stoke City and Tottenham defender Kevin Wimmer is the centre back for them. And there's actually a father-son duo. Vladimir Weiss Senior is the manager, and Vladimir Weiss, former Rangers player, Vladimir Weiss Junior is the captain, who is 34 years old. I cannot believe that Vladimir Weiss is 34 years old. Time does fly when you're winning trophies, I guess.
Yeah.
Both on the art media team, weren't they? I think the dad was the manager, and Vladimir
Philip Sebo,
for art media,
of course, was for art media as well, wasn't he? Philip
Don't want to
Sebo.
mention art media. No.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, another catastrophe.
Yeah, I think Vladimir Weiss Jr. was a bit young for that game, but I think Weiss was the manager for that team.
Yeah,
that's one to certainly forget. Yeah. I remember watching that game, being a young boy watching that game, and I was like, "What is going on?" Is that Gordon Strachan's first game?
Yeah,
like his first competitive
game.
And they nearly brought it back in a home leg too.
The second leg was one of my, I think it might have been the first game I went to with my dad once I had a season ticket. The second leg I think was the first game, because we won 4-0 and we were so close to dragging it back, but it didn't quite happen. Philip Sebo definitely was in the art media team for those games, and then Rangers signed him, and then he was absolutely hopeless for them. Just a couple of comments before we can chat about before we go. Interested by this one, Tony. DVP talking about Brendan in comparison to Ange, and saying there was gaps all over the midfield in Europe, and reckons it might be different under Rodgers. I just wonder if that's a view that you share. That maybe just generally speaking, that maybe under Rodgers, with a few years under our belt, we're in a as good a place as we've been for a number of years to give this a go in the Champions League.
Listen, our problem under Ange in Europe was the concession of goals. We knew we could score. Went to Spain against Real Betis, lost 4-3. Went to Germany, Leverkusen lost 3-2. You couldn't say that about previous Celtic teams. They couldn't score in Europe. But our problem was the concession of goals. And that's something we need to address. And we always just seem to concede in clusters, didn't we? There was times when Celtic were conceding like 2 and 3 within a short period of time. I mean, we lost 2 late goals in Leverkusen, didn't we, under Ange? We were 2-1 up. We were 2-0 up against Real Betis in jig time and still contrived to lose 3 goals either side of the interval, didn't we? So, you have to give yourself every chance to win these games. And I think Rodgers is, how stubborn Ange was with the way he played. I think Rodgers is going to be more pragmatic in Europe. He kind of had a look last season and realised there's ways to beat these teams, and you have to be at your game. Celtic couldn't have played any better against Atletico Madrid and Lazio. Took 1 point out of 6. Now, it's fine margins. It's just tweaks, and this is the tweaks he's making to this team that will turn a draw and a loss like that into 2 wins. And that, see if you get those 2 wins, what a difference that makes to your Champions League campaign. So that's why everybody felt, especially in Europe, they weren't too far away. Don't want to hear we're not too far away this year. I want to hear we've turned those games into wins because we've learned, and the manager's learned, and he kind of knows what kind of players he needs. So I'm with that comment in terms of the biggest problem always for Celtic is the amount of goals we concede naturally, but it's the way we concede them as well. Teams don't have to work hard to score goals against Celtic. Previously in Europe, you could get bread and butter goals from corner kicks, balls into the box, and we have to eradicate that kind of stuff. and you have every faith in your midfield being able to contribute as well. But it's that kind of stopping it at source that I think Celtic have to work upon, and I think that's what the manager's been working upon, because he was talking about the pressing with and without the ball. Without the ball in Europe's the big key. That's what we're talking about. Can this style of play domestically transition into Europe? And we're going to have to do a lot of work without the ball in Europe against teams of a certain calibre and quality. That's when you'll see if these players are learning and it's going to work on that stage.
It's both boxes, isn't it? It's the attacking box and the defensive box. That's where we've gone wrong. I think the rest of it we competed in 5 of the 6 matches. Obviously, the game in Madrid was a bit of a blowout, but other than that, we were in all these games going late on into them. So that fills you with confidence. I know we spoke about it yesterday, guys, but I'm saying it right now. Nicholas Kuhn, I think, is going to be a huge player for us in the Champions League, and it's a player we didn't have in the Champions League last year. I think we had Maida on the right wing for a lot of our Champions League last season, and with all due respect to Lewis Palma, I think Maida on the left, and honestly Nicholas Kuhn running into that space. I don't care if you're Leipzig or Dortmund. I think he's going to be really important for us. I'm so excited about Nicholas Kuhn in the Champions League, Kevin.
Yeah, he's of all the players, who have played well so far this season, we haven't conceded a goal yet in the league. He is the one that excites me most. And I know we say glibly, and I know it's a cliche, when you've got a player who you've seen for a few months, and then he steps up the game. It's like a new player. It's like we brought in a quality addition, and he's a smashing player. He's got pace. He runs quickly with the ball under control. That's something you don't often see at any level, and you certainly don't see it in Scottish football. And usually the players who can do that, have that incisive running movement with the ball tied to their feet under complete control and able to make the passes, with the peripheral vision where he sees movement in front of him. Getting all of that in the one package is usually beyond the price range of a Scottish club, and we've got him. And he's been great. We saw kind of little signs of it towards the end of last season, but he's been smashing this season, and I completely agree. He is a European. He's a Champions League player. He's a player who I think will be of great assistance to us in the Champions League.
It's so exciting. A few people mentioned Schmeichel as well as being a big player. I mean, I love Joe Hart. I think maybe the one thing you would say at the Champions League level, Joe Hart maybe didn't make the saves of a Fraser Forster or an Artur Boruc. Maybe Kasper Schmeichel can do that. But with the ball at his feet as well, he's clearly a bit more comfortable than Hart. And that could be quite important if teams are pressing us. So, it's going to be tough. These matches are going to be difficult. I don't think we can understate that. The teams, even like take Dinamo Zagreb for example, they're better than any other team in Scotland that we'd face quite comfortably, I would say. So, and that's just an example. We're going to play better teams than that. So we're going to lose matches. It's going to be a struggle at times, but I think Celtic might do better than a lot of people were predicting. But it's up to the team to show it. Big thanks to Boston 2.0 for the donation. Australian dollars as well. So it must be. Unless that's just my computer showing that, I'm not sure. Did you want to say something, Ryan?
Yeah, it was just on that right-hand side. I think two of Celtic's most informed players at the moment are operating on the right-hand side. I think this is the best Alistair Johnson's played since he signed for Celtic, and I include Ange Postecoglou's period in that too. And it's helping Nicholas Kuhn because the two have such a great relationship. Even, I think the other day, Nicholas Kuhn posted something on Instagram, and he was one of the first commenters, so they're clearly pals off the pitch as well as having that connection on it. It just seems like a really good group, and they all seem to be together and unified, and that's good. It's the team spirit, and you want to see that. But I did an article yesterday that's available on the website, a StatsBomb match report, but it's just filled with good things about Alistair Johnston, to be honest, because he most key passes, highest on-ball value, 1 assist. He's just so effective in this team. He took a couple of games to get used to Brendan Rodgers this season. I think the Copa America was down to that as well. That was partly to blame for his slower start. But the past 3 or 4 games, or 2 or 3 games, he's been absolutely electric. He looks like he's really up for this season. I think he's only going to go from strength to strength, and that helps Nicholas Kuhn as well, because he can go on the overlap or he can track back as well. So they're clearly on the same wavelength.
That Johnston-Kuhn dynamic reminds me, and Kevin will know what I'm talking about here, Jackie McNamara and Simon Donnelly playing that swashbuckling way that Tommy Burns' team played. They just fell short, but they were absolutely terrific. And again, you were talking about the friendly thing, Ryan. Those two have remained friends, Jackie McNamara and Simon Donnelly, and do a lot of stuff together. And, these two guys, that's hugely important. You got to tune into that wavelength, and it really helps you. And I also noticed as well that Bernardo on Sunday was chipping in with the two of them. He was looking for them a lot. When he got the ball, he thought, a reliable outlet. These two guys, I can either get it back or something creative will happen. And I really liked that. And I agree. I think those two functioning, and they're functioning really, really well. I mean, Alistair Johnston's having the time of his life at Celtic. Kuhn is just stepping up to the plate and coming onto a game. And this is where we want it to transition. Because if Kuhn can do it in Europe, you will be able to score goals via that outlet with those two get surging forward and playing. But that's what it reminds me of. Jackie Mack and Simon Donnelly were a big part of that Celtic team in that Tommy Burns kind of era, which played some wonderful stuff, but just fell short. I'm just hoping that this team, I don't expect them to fall short domestically, but certainly hoping that they can raise it a notch when we play in Europe. But yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? You're trying to put a rein on your excitement and where you think it can go and where you hope it can go. But it's all going well, and bring it on. I think for once you're genuinely saying, bring it on,
With that victory over Rangers on Sunday, we went above them in the head-to-head. And I think it was the first time since 1935 that we have been ahead of Rangers in a head-to-head. And, these things matter. And if we win the league, by my reckoning, Tony, you can maybe correct this, but if we win 2 trophies this season, we overtake their accolade that they had awarded themselves. I can never remember, but anyway, I think it means more to Rangers than it does to us. But we'll take it. We'll take it.
'Cause we have a European Cup we can talk about, so that's probably the reason. Yeah, it's great times and so excited. Just want this break over with. We go into Hearts. That's going to be a big game. Hearts at Celtic Park is always a tasty game, and they're really struggling. So we could hope for another batter in there and send us into the Champions League, Tony.
I'm not so sure about this comment, though, to be fair.
Is that your next podcast?
Next podcast. Listen, I guess there's a compliment in there somewhere, isn't there? Thank you very much, ladies. I appreciate that. Sorry, Hamish, what did you say to me there? You said something, you asked me something.
It's fine. To be honest, it's fine. I was just waffling on. I'm happy to leave it there because we've been on a wee bit longer today anyway because there was the 4 of us on. But just a general chat about where we're at in the moment. I think we're all quite excited for the Champions League, and I hope everyone else is as well. We'll return tomorrow, I guess, to chat some more. So thanks everyone. Stay in touch. We'll chat to you tomorrow.